At the age of 45, a clinical psychologist told me something that changed my life forever. She said, "You might be neurodivergent." But then when I went looking for answers, the official tests that I did didn't really point me in the right direction. You see, starting with neurodivergence, I went through and eliminated things because I realised, okay, I'm not really ADHD, I don't have dyslexia, dyspraxia or anything like that. And it pretty much came down to autism. So then I had to start doing online tests to see if that was true. But none of the tests were conclusive. They didn't really say, oh yes, you're autistic or anything like that. But one test that I did do very well at was the camouflaging or the masking test. And that was where I started to say, okay, so this means that I'm hiding the autism. So where do I go from there? But then I found this video by Professor Tony Attwood, and it's called Could It Be Aspergers? So I didn't understand at the time, but so you know now, Aspergers is what became autism level 1. Just, I always say this, but we don't use Asperger's as a term any longer due to the negative association with Hans Asperger and his association with the Nazi Party and sending autistic people to their deaths. And this video validated me so much because it described me, and I shared it with everybody that I could think of, because most people, well, don't know much about autism, and second of all, believed that I wasn't that at all. Most people, at least anyway. And one of the first things he talked about was how socializing, that's one of the stereotypes, is that we are not hardwired for socializing, but we can learn to socialize. Most of the steps, the tests stop right there. Like, are you good at socializing? Yes or no, degrees, and then moving on from there. But unless you account for masking, it does not account for our ability to learn to socialize and, you know, do small talk. We can learn all that stuff. The trade-off is all of this stuff is incredibly exhausting for us because we're not hardwired for it. We don't find it as easy as neurotypical people do. And there's also another aspect of this as well, was our lack of ability to explain how we feel. Now, all this is attributed to autism. I've since discovered this is alexithymia, and I score very highly at that. And this is how Tony Attwood explains it. The concept of not being able to explain to people how you feel or how we're feeling. And this is what he believes is going on in our head. I don't know how to grasp the many thoughts and feelings in my mind, hold one, identify it, and explain it to you in speech in a way that you will understand. And what that really, really resonates with me. And this next bit got very interesting for me, because then he started talking about the girls, or the female profile. And this is a really weird thing for me, because I found myself relating to that way more than any of the young boys when they talked about their traits for the most part. And that's where the masking comes from. Girls are incredibly good at the masking. And one of the things he talked about was how, to start with at least, that at school that there's girls that will observe and copy. They observe what everyone else is doing, what the other girls are doing. And if they're wearing pink, they wear pink. And whatever they play with, they'll play with those toys. They figure out who's popular and copy that girl. And I'm a bit of a weird one, really, where I didn't really go to that much trouble to make friends. I found it was just simply, for me, I just, you know, stuck to myself and just played my games and did whatever I wanted to do. And I had little concern for making friends. I've always been that way. But what would end up happening was that whatever it is, if I was playing Lego, another kid who's interested in Lego would come up and go, oh, you're building this and that. And a conversation would happen. Or the other way around, maybe another kid would be playing with some toy and I'd go up and say, oh, that's interesting, I've got one of those. And they either would go, get lost, or they'd engage. And if they would just get lost or they ignored me, I just didn't bother with them and moved on. I didn't care. I didn't try to make friends. So it meant for me just, no effort on my part, that making friends wasn't particularly hard. The hard part is maintaining them. The hard part is being able to get through to people, or to, sometimes they'll be incredibly unfair. You'll do something for them, they won't help you out in return. But the friends that I have made, that I have managed to keep, I don't have that many, but they're lifelong friends, and I don't have to talk to them every week. But the reason that we've stayed friends is that they are incredibly, I know, blunt, or maybe just honest, that honest to a fault, as they say. So I never have to wonder, what are they thinking? I don't go, oh, are they in a bad mood, or have I done something wrong? If they're annoyed, they would just say. If they're annoyed about something, they'll say. If they don't agree with something, they'll just say so. So there's no game playing. It's just candor was the word I was looking for. And this statement that Tony made was a really big one for me, that he described us as our allegiance only being to the truth. And wow, I really, really relate to that, where whenever someone has said to me, if I'm having a discussion, some people see them as debate discussion, other people say it's an argument, the exact same conversation, and one person will call it an argument, another person will say, hey, we had some good debates, didn't we? Obviously, the autistic people would see it as a debate. But the difference being the way that people see that conflict. And the neurotypical people I've found will say to me, oh, you just want to be right. Side quest there, that when people tell you something about you that's just not you, just the opposite of you, they're projecting. And so when I hear that now, I know, oh, you mean you want to be right. Got it. Because I know that's not what I'm after. I'm after the truth. If you think about it, you've got a choice. If you're at the crossroads and you want to turn left or right, you can either choose the truth or you can choose being right. And they don't go together. I'm always on the side of truth. And people don't like it because truth withstands scrutiny. So the more questions you ask, the truth will rise to the surface. But if you think about it, if you're trying to hide the truth, then you're not going to like any scrutiny, you're not going to like questions. And that's when I find that people will say to me, oh, you just want to be right, or they'll just start attacking me ad hominem instead of engaging in the actual discussion. And if I'm wrong, I want to know. That's the whole point. They think I just want to be right. they know that they're wrong. That's why they're saying it. And they're just trying to explain away why I'm being so relentless, because my allegiance is to the truth. And this is something pretty common with autistic people. And this last one was interesting because I'd never given it a second thought, about sensory issues and sensitivities. I just assumed that everyone could smell what I can smell, everybody can hear and see what I can see. I just assumed everybody didn't like the feeling of wool against their skin and stuff like that. And there's other aspects too, that like if one of your parents doesn't like bright lights, for example, at my house, as I was growing up, my mum would never have bright lights on the ceiling on. There was always like a lamp in the corner or something at night time. The TV would be over here, behind would be a lamp, and it was I just got used to that. And I don't know whether mum's autistic or not, but the point of the story is that was a sensitivity that got taken care of. I didn't have to worry about the bright lights. But then going back to what I said about noises and stuff, like you hear a smoke alarm, nobody likes the sound of that. But to us, it's a lot worse. That's the whole point. And so I started to discover that I had a stronger sense of smell than most people. I could taste things. My taste is very different. I believe, I haven't tested, but I believe I'm a super taster, because, some people go, oh, this is fine. And I'll be like, oh, it's incredibly bitter. And what are you talking about? so you know, and then sense of smell being stronger, the taste is different when your sense of, because smell is really your taste. That's a whole other thing. But that was the interesting part to me, is discovering that that's something about autistic people, but then realizing and thinking it didn't apply to me, and then realizing it really did. But this is the downside, is that once you realize it, you realize, oh, I don't have to try to hide this anymore. I don't have to, fight the urge to put my hands over my ears when a smoke alarm goes off. Now I'll just go the other direction and I'll go and put some headphones on. I've got earmuffs here as well. And I don't care if someone says to me, oh, what do you got them on? I just don't give a stuff. I'm just going to do it anyway. Whereas the masking will tell us, don't put your hands over your ears. People will think you're weird. Don't put earmuffs on, because people might go, what are you doing that for? He's still there. So that was a really interesting turning point for me. Wasn't diagnostic criteria. It wasn't doing some kind of a test that got me over the line that made me realise I was autistic. It was this video. Give it a watch. It's 34 minutes long. He goes into great detail, and it's amazing also to hear, this is another thing that was really validating for me, that, you look at the DSM-5 or something like that, and you could easily read past that and go, oh, no, that's not me, and just move on and think, that those criteria don't apply to you. But when you hear what he has to say, he'll have the DSM-5 on one of his slides in the background, and then he'll sort of read it and go, oh, that's academics for you. And he'll just, sort of runs them down for trying to sound intelligent, but not really being understood by anybody. And that's the other thing. One last thing I'll say about a stereotypical thing that I believe didn't apply to me was to do with eye contact. The way I film videos is the way I talk to people in real life. At the start of the sentence, I look in the eyes, the camera, and then I look away when I'm talking and I look back again. According to the criteria, that means that I'm not autistic, if that was the only criteria. That means I'm not having an issue with eye contact. But here's the reality of it. I am. What's actually going on is I can't maintain it. I can't stay looking in someone's eyes or even the camera while I'm thinking and while I'm talking. And that's now recognised as a trait. Looking away while talking is now recognised by autistic assessors as an autistic trait. But you can see how before, because I looked, that therefore, even AI tried to tell me that was not correct. It tried to say, oh, well, you're looking, so therefore it's not a problem with eye contact. But anyway, have a watch of that video. I've covered the things that really applied to us people who are late diagnosed. If any of that applies to you, if you've watched the video, I'd like to hear your thoughts about it. If you're in the process of figuring out if you're autistic, you aren't alone. You don't need to be officially diagnosed. Try to get into groups, not online, not typing in Facebook and Reddit. Try to get into groups where you can talk face to face, or at least in real time in a Zoom meeting. Those are the two ways. Reach out to other people. Even if you're not diagnosed, doesn't matter, get into those groups and you'll find that you're more likely to realise, oh, these are my people. If you're really neurotypical, you've got no interest in this. You won't be watching this video and you won't be wondering whether you're autistic. Here's another clue. So, have yourself a good day.